Welcome to Mythic Hidden Chronicles, where history's untold stories come to life. Today, we take you deep into the heart of the American frontier, a land of vast prairies, untamed wilderness, and whispered legends carried by the wind. But the Wild West wasn't just about outlaws and sheriffs. It was a land where cultures clashed, where survival demanded resilience, and where truth was often buried beneath the dust of forgotten trails. Join us as we uncover a story that defies the myths and brings the real West into focus. The wind howled across the open prairie, sweeping through the tall grass and rustling the sparse trees that dotted the vast, untamed land. A lone rider moved steadily through the terrain, his horse's hooves kicking up dust beneath the golden glow of the setting sun. This was a land of stories, of whispered legends carried by the wind, of men and women who shaped their fate through grit, honor, and survival. Elena Ramirez adjusted her wide-brimmed hat against the wind, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The daughter of a Mexican vaquero and an Apache woman, she had grown up between two worlds. She was at home in the saddle, able to track a lost steer through the worst of storms, and had learned to read the land with the instincts of her mother's people. Her father had taught her the discipline of roping and ranching, the patience it took to care for cattle, and the pride of an honest day's work. In the town of Fort Collins, life had its own rhythm, dictated by the clang of blacksmiths' hammers, the distant whistle of a locomotive, and the murmurs of deals made in the saloon's smoky haze. Cowboys came and went, drifters seeking work or trouble, and settlers built their futures one wooden plank at a time. But beneath the surface, tensions brewed. Land disputes, broken treaties, and the ever-encroaching railroads threatened to change everything. Elena had little interest in town life. Her loyalty was to the open plains, to the cattle drives that took her far from the choking grip of civilization. But one evening, as she rode into town to deliver a herd, she overheard a conversation that changed everything. "You hear about the raids near the northern ranches?" a man muttered in the dim glow of the saloon lanterns. "Whole families gone, just vanished," another man shook his head. "Some say it's the Comanche, others say it's a gang of outlaws using war paint to shift the blame." Elena listened, her fingers tightening around the reins. She knew the truth was rarely as simple as town folk made it seem. The Comanche were fierce, but they fought for survival, not senseless slaughter. And if outlaws were indeed exploiting fear for their own gain, someone had to stop them. She wasn't the only one who thought so. Across the room, a tall man leaned against the bar, his dark eyes keen with intelligence. Jackson Harper had been a slave once, freed by the war but shackled by the prejudices that remained. The West had offered him something the South never could: opportunity. He had earned his reputation as a top-tier horseman, a man who could break even the wildest stallion, and his presence commanded respect. "You think there's truth to it?" Jackson asked as Elena took a seat beside him. "Something's happening," she admitted. "And if it's not stopped, there'll be blood on both sides." Jackson took a slow sip of his whiskey. "Then I reckon we ought to find out the truth before war finds us first." Their investigation led them into the wilderness, where they found more than they bargained for. Chayton, a Lakota Sioux tracker who had once been part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, had returned to his people, disillusioned by the way their culture was turned into entertainment for crowds who would never understand its depth. He had seen signs in the land, hoof prints where there should have been none, cattle taken without a trace, and bodies found where no battle had been fought. Together, they uncovered the truth. A gang of ruthless outlaws, disguising themselves as Comanche warriors, were pillaging settlements, knowing that the blame would be cast on the native tribes. Their leader, a former Confederate officer named Silas Grady, was a man who thrived on chaos, stirring conflict to drive settlers and natives into war so he could claim the land himself. The three knew they had little time before the violence erupted beyond control. They rode through the night, warning those who would listen, gathering allies from ranchers who refused to be manipulated and from native leaders who sought peace rather than destruction. The final confrontation came in the hills north of Fort Collins. As dawn painted the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Elena, Jackson, and Chayton stood alongside their allies, waiting for Grady's gang to make their move. When the first shot rang out, the battle began. Dust rose in thick clouds as horses charged, bullets whizzing through the air, the cries of men and the thunder of hooves blending into a cacophony of chaos. But amidst the turmoil, the truth held firm. Elena's rifle found its mark, Jackson's steady hand guided his horse through the fray, and Chayton's arrows flew swift and true. By the time the sun reached its peak, the gang was no more. Grady lay in the dirt, his ambitions crushed beneath the weight of justice. As the survivors stood among the fallen, breathing the heavy air of victory, Elena knew the West would never be tamed. It was a land that demanded resilience, where truth had to be fought for, and where the lines between right and wrong were never as clear as the townsfolk believed. But for now, at least, peace had been won. And as long as there were those willing to stand for it, the whispers of the plains would carry their stories for generations to come. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. The Wild West was more than just a battleground of outlaws and sheriffs. It was a land of cultures intertwining, of hardships and triumphs, of stories waiting to be told. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Mythic Hidden Chronicles, where history's hidden truths come to life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the legends alive.